trill here with Free to Feed. I cannot tell you how long I have been looking forward to having a conversation like this and to be able to announce that we are officially bringing Dr. Taylor onto the Free to Feed team. And the reason why this is so incredibly important to me is because as we've worked with literal thousands of families navigating their food allergy journeys and all kinds of feeding modalities, is over and over and over again one of the common issues that these parents and families are navigating is, how do I best communicate with my medical provider? How do I navigate this in the office? And that is oftentimes and all of us at Free to Feed can give our own experiences and our own thoughts, but this is a game changer because we can speak directly to the source. And so, Dr. Taylor, it is an honor and a pleasure to be able to officially welcome you onto the team. I am so incredibly grateful for you and for your background and your expertise. So if you could kick us off today by telling us a little bit more about yourself and your work and background, and from there we will dive into some questions.
Absolutely. Welcome, Free to Feed family. I'm glad to be with you. I am Dr. Monica, it looks like Monica, Taylor, and I am an only child, and I absolutely love my job. So I am a pediatrician. I've been so for over 20 years. I did my undergraduate at University of Rochester. Then I did my medical school at Temple University in Philadelphia. Then I went on to do my residency in Youngstown, Ohio at Todd Children's Hospital. And I've had a couple jobs, but right now I'm working in Bluffton, South Carolina, well, Ridgeland and Hardyville and all sorts of areas in South Carolina, and I'm absolutely loving it. So I'm really excited to join the Free to Feed family.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Taylor. And you fit perfectly in with the team of, with our name situation between myself, Lashana, and everybody else. That's perfect. So I love that you, one, have an extensive experience in pediatrics, right? So you've been in pediatrics for a really long time, and I appreciate that work and that vital work that you're doing for families. Tell us a little bit more about what brought you to that particular field. Why, when you went through medical school, did you decide that pediatrics was the specialty you wanted to go into?
Well, actually, well before medical school, I knew I was doing pediatrics. So when I was 7, I was set on being a mom, and that was it. But then after that, I'm like, okay, I have to have a real job. So I was either going to be a teacher or a pediatrician. And then I was a camp counselor, and then had like 30 children all at once, and was like, nope. So then I, from day one, it's always been pediatrics. Like, I don't even like adult medicine. So this is just where I love to be.
I love it. And to mention that for those of you who are moms, like, that job in and of itself, a boatload of work. And for you to say, like, not only is family an important part for me, but how can I impact lots of little people is really, really incredible. So, and I relate so much to the 30 children all at the same time. Just hearing that makes me want to run away with my arms flailing. So my hats off, my brows off to those who are teachers and counselors, things like that are careers with lots of little people all at the same time. So for your specific career, you get to work with families. So when you're working with a family, I imagine in the pediatric realm, we're talking like infants, like newborn, brand new, maybe even meeting with families before they even have a baby, and then on up through 18 years old.
We usually see our youngest baby at 2 days and then all the way up to 18.
Okay. Oh, and little squishies. Oh man.
I love them. I absolutely love them.
That is, I'm jealous. I will admit that I'm super jealous. You get to see itty bitty squishes on a regular basis.
And the best part is I usually let the moms like hold them in the chair because I like to carry them to the table because I'm like, oh, let me get my baby love in. Okay, I'm good.
Oh, now we know your secret. Now we know. Now we know how you're getting in those snuggles. Oh, that's fabulous. So it's good for the parent too because they get to sit and relax and rest because that's what you should be allowed to do after you have given birth. So you have these little bitty squishes, and so in your work then, as you're working with these families, I assume that a good portion of the discussions that you're having are not only wellness, but also feeding and like navigating all those like worries and concerns as parents are going through like the different phases, right? The early feeding journey into the starting solids on into like really diving into nutrition. So tell us a little bit more about as you're working with, especially like those little biddies, and having those discussions around feeding journeys. Is it common for you to experience those families who are either struggling with different types of latch or feeding issues, or to chat with families who may even be dealing with food reactivity problems?
We have some that are struggling. It's a process, and I think it's especially difficult for the moms that have gone through it before with one child, and then baby number two doesn't want to fall in line. So there's a lot of that. And then there are the moms where they bring the baby and they're like, fix this. Something is wrong. This baby is just screaming and unhappy and pooping and like something's just not right, fix it. So we do have a lot of those moms. And I think a lot of it is kind of, we got to talk it off the ledge and like, okay, let's get to what's going on. Let's see what we're dealing with, and let's try some things, because sometimes we're still at the guesswork phase, which I'm really excited about Free to Feed because you're going to help that. So we're kind of guessing at, okay, let's try this and see if this works, and come back and let's try this. So I'm really super excited for Free to Feed to be able to help me take some of my guesswork out of my process.
Yes, exactly. No, I appreciate that. And you're right, there's a lot of guesswork, especially when they're so young, and they can't communicate with us, right? They can't say to us, mommy, my belly hurts, right? And so it's a lot of guesswork of like, okay, well, why is this tiny human screaming at us? And what can we do about it? There's communication occurring. What do we do next? So I really appreciate that. And when you are working with the families, then the other thing that I really appreciate that you kind of alluded to is that when there's an issue, like one, yes, of course, like helping the parent, like validating that this is an issue. Also helping, you said, walk them off the ledge, right? Like it's hard. I remember, especially back with like my oldest, by the time I got to the space of feeling comfortable to say out loud, like, I'm struggling. I'm on the struggle bus. Like my child cries all day, every day, and I don't know what's happening. And I remember already feeling like I had failed a little bit, right? That I couldn't figure it out on my own, and that I was kind of like at my wit's end by then. So it really did feel like on the ledge of like, I am tired and I'm postpartum and like my hormones are raging and my boobs feel like they're gonna fall off and like, what is happening? So I appreciate that there's acknowledgement of like the fact that the parent is likely struggling in the midst of this too, right? Yes, the baby is struggling, but that causes that parent to often struggle. When the other thing that I really love is that you said like, let's dive in, right? Like, and it may be a guessing game, but let's still dive in and let's look for the answers to why this is particularly happening. And food is part of the laundry list, right, of things that could be a part of different types of symptomology. And that's why Free to Feed exists, because it's the the food component is not an easy thing to tackle, right? It's not a easy, like, couple of minutes of being like, this is what you need to know about food and that's it. And good luck with that and shimmy out the door. And I think that's part of the struggle that parents have of like, because it's so nuanced and there's a lot to dig into and not a lot of time to dig into it in that moment. And so I'd love to talk to you more about, as you are joining the Free to Feed team, in our discussions, we really dug in a lot into, for our families, one of the big struggles that they have is that communication with their medical provider in a way that's most valuable to them and to the medical provider, right? Like, how are we making sure that it's being communicated concisely, effectively, and in a way that we can get the most out of the appointment? That maybe on average, what would you say, 15 minutes usually?
At best. That's assuming that the triage process is like blink and done. So it's really a truncated process, especially, if it's a well visit, like in addition to a problem, there's just unfortunately just not a lot of time to kind of do it all and do it well.
Yeah, and I'll be the first to admit that I am totally guilty of bringing up the problem in the well visit, right? Like that's when we're already there.
I do that sometimes also as well.
Right, I'm already there, and I'm be like, oh, and by the way, there's this other thing that would typically take us like 30 minutes to talk about, but let's just throw this into our regular well visit anyway. So appreciate that. So as we are looking at like how then you come into a piece of that journey, right? So a family is navigating this and they know that they have at best a 15-minute kind of truncated time with their medical provider to communicate to them, these are the issues that I'm seeing. This is what I'm concerned about. And on your side, because you have this plethora of experience, in my mind, I see the capability being, having the time to listen to the entirety of the journey, picking and seeing what in that journey is most valuable to the medical provider, to then give parents kind of an action plan for going to that medical provider. Tell me what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think because every baby is different, just kind of, and then most moms are kind of like worried. You have this baby that you're responsible for, and of course you want to do everything right. You don't want to mess up the baby. So just kind of helping the moms to kind of navigate and kind of maybe get past all of the nerves and the other things and kind of like, okay, so let's see what's going on. What's our problem list? What are we hoping to get out of the visit? What might we need to ask about what to do next in the visit? So that way, when you're going in, you kind of have the game plan, even if it's written down in a notebook. That way you can go in and be like, okay, this is what I need to know. This is what's going on with my baby. This is, what, I'm wondering if we need to do or should do, or what do you think? Just kind of to know, kind of going in ready and not just kind of, well, this, and this kind of bing, time's up, sorry. And then, the provider's frustrated, the parent's frustrated, and then the baby's like, hey, I'm still here. You didn't fix anything.
Oh, and you're right? It lends its way to frustration across the board with everybody, right? No one is satisfied with like that being the result of an appointment. So I think that even the ability to go through what I need to talk about with someone else who is a medical professional, just to say the things out loud, one, that's powerful all in and of itself, right? Being able to get through everything without feeling like I gotta rush this all out and get this all into this quick little moment. Two, I see it being so very valuable to being able to do that in a space that I know is going to be friendly. And what I mean by that is free of judgment of, when I say, I'm on the ledge, right? Like I'm so stressed. And if I have one more night of baby crying all night long, like it's bonkers. And being able to say that freely in and of itself is therapeutic, right? Is powerful. And then to say, okay, now I've said my spiel in its entirety, having you there to say, okay, I hear you, and all of that is valid. These are the pieces of that journey that are best to be communicated, right? And if that's, from the journey you talked about, like my journey, for example, with my oldest, even if I had gone to you and said, she cries all the time, we got a bloody diaper, eczema, and X, Y, and Z other problems that I'm dealing with. One, just being able to say that, all of it, and describe it. But two, then for you to be able to say, okay, those bloody diapers, that's a big problem. And this is what you can do about it. I would recommend bringing in a stool to your medical provider to test when you get there. And these are the things to prioritize and the questions to ask based on what's most valuable to the current journey. So in my particular situation, then, just as an example, and you're kind of hearing these different symptoms that I'm concerned about, what are your thoughts then on, like, yep, I hear that, and these are the things that would be kind of pulled out and teased out in order to make the appointment most successful?
So it seems like you've kind of already done that, but you've been down this road a lot.
Twice.
I think kind of like the highlights of what's going on. For example, we're having, so many diapers. How many diapers? What do the diapers look like? Depending upon how big the child is, did they have one diaper that had red in it and you gave them fruit punch? So it's kind of, what's kind of going on. And then I like poop. Maybe not, Lashana doesn't like poop as much as I do, but I'm just like, bring me the diaper. Better yet, if you poop in the office, I've gone in the trash can before and be like, is it in there? Okay, let's go get that. So just kind of, knowing the details of like what's going on, because it's very difficult to be like, well, a lot. Well, what does a lot mean? Okay, so like the baby, vomited. Well, was it a mouthful? Was it a bib? Was it a lot? Like, was it projectile? So some of the things especially with a new mom, you just might not know, like what's important, what's not, what babies do, what they don't. Because sometimes we'll have new mommies and be like, oh my goodness, they're having diarrhea. I'm like, yellow CD poop? Yes, perfect. So they're like, oh, that's okay. So a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. And that's what we're here for. That's our job, to help you to kind of navigate and go through this thing, because all the kids are different and every situation is not going to be the same. So some babies are crying and fussy, and that's not the problem, so it's like we got to kind of figure out what the problem is and how to get the baby better. And then, like I said, there's also a lot talking to mom off the ledge, because I do a lot of like patting, and we're like, we're okay, and we're okay. Okay, we're going to work this out. If it doesn't work, you're going to come back. You're going to call me. And we had a lot of head nodding. So it's just kind of a process. Sometimes it's like easier, sometimes not so much. Sometimes it ends in a referral. Sometimes, maybe you can't breastfeed. All of that is okay. As long as mommy's okay and baby's okay and growing, then I'm okay.
Yep. And I also want to say that I love what you mentioned about there's two different humans, right? Two different things and two different bodies, two different things happening in two different bodies. And so it's almost like you are a pediatrician, but you're also dealing with adults in, especially in these new parents. And one thing that I think is so powerful to mention in that is that, like, it would be strange if these parents did know what a normal poop looked like for a baby, right? Like,
right.
You're a brand new parent, and if you haven't had younger siblings or nieces and nephews or worked at a daycare, like if you haven't been exposed a lot to tiny humans, why would you know?
Right.
That's what a normal.
It doesn't look normal at all for any person.
It doesn't look normal. If that came out of my body, I would be very worried. And so to give some validation to that too, to say yeah, I had no idea that it wasn't normal for my baby to be stooling as frequently as she did, right? When I'm like, oh, it's not normal to be stooling like a dozen times a day, right? That's not normal at her age. But to know the difference between that versus, a watery stool is totally normal for a breastfed baby. And again, why would we know that? That's not a thing that we would know. And that's okay. That's okay that we don't know that. So being able to have somebody to have those conversations with, because in that same realm, then it's so much more valuable to not spend that precious short amount of time that you have learning the basics if there's something deeper that you need to dig into, right?
Right.
And so I think that's valuable and important to mention as well. And those descriptors, I think, are part of what feels like some of the miscommunication between parents and their medical providers when a parent says yeah, my baby is spitting up a lot. And when the medical provider hears that, yeah, okay, babies spit up a lot. That's a thing they do. Versus having the extra time to spend to ask the questions of well, how often and how much, and does it cause them discomfort, and is it a long time after the feed, and are they being jostled around, right? To really dive in and say, oh, the communication to your medical provider isn't your baby spits up. The communication is my child is projectile vomiting 2 hours after a feed.
Right.
Two very different things.
So much more helpful.
Yes. Very different things, very different action items from the medical provider. And again, it would be weird if a parent just knew that that's how they needed to communicate. Right. And that's where I feel like you will bring so much value to parents to be able to say, okay, baby spits up a lot. Let's actually put that into tangible terms for your appointment to make sure that you're getting the most out of it, or to give some, amount of assurance of yeah, let's dive into that. And parent says yeah, baby is spitting up, every so often with a feed, and it's right after the feed when they burp, and it's not very much, and it doesn't cause them discomfort. And you'd be like, oh, okay, baby stuff, got it. And again,
laundry detergent, you'll be fine.
yeah. And again, if that never concerned you, I would almost be a little bit more worried for you, because you're a parent. And of course, we're going to analyze everything with the microscope that we want the best for our littles. And so with that, tell me a little bit more about, I know you yourself have several littles, and when you were navigating these types of appointments for yourself or your children, how did you struggle at all early on with these kind of conversations? Or did you feel like because of your background, they were a little bit easier?
Well, I think the sad part is the children don't know what you do for a living. So they kind of always are going to make you struggle somewhat. So it's a lot different on the other side of the desk, and sometimes I think it's a little bit harder, because I'm going to tell you a really sad, embarrassing story. But when my daughter was maybe 5 days old, I was convinced she had meningitis. I was in the ER, and I'm like, she needs a spinal tap, and they're just like, she's fine. She's fine. And I'm like, but she's lethargic and she's this. And they're looking at this normal baby. And in my mind, I have her dead because I'm just like, oh my goodness. And I'm like medical and I should know this. And this baby's going to die and it's going to be all my fault. And oh my goodness. And they're just like, she's fine. Go home. Go home. And I'm just like, okay, so it's a lot different, whether you have the MD or you don't have the MD. Like even with my first son, I didn't know to point the PP down because he was peeing all over everything. I'm like, I had girls before. So there's the book knowledge, and then there's the kind of the mommy knowledge, and then the things that you learn later. So I'm just like every other mom, I clearly want the best. And sometimes it's just like, you don't want to mess up. So that's why that my kids have a pediatrician. So I take them to their appointments just like, my patients come to me because I'm like, you know what? I need someone else to be responsible just in case I miss something.
Yes, yes. It's a little bit of a curse to know all of the things that could go wrong with a baby, and then have a baby, right? Like you go to school and they're like, here's just the truckload of problems that could ever occur with your baby, and then you have your own. Yeah, that's knowledge is power, and sometimes it's a tiny bit too much power, it feels like. I feel that is a similar experience as some of the food allergy parents have when they have a second baby. If they've had one journey with a food allergy little, and then they have their second baby, and now they're just super analyzing, and they're waiting for that just to hit that wall or that obstacle that they're like expecting. And the acknowledgement is that, like, are they likely to have a second journey with food reactivity? There is an increased probability if you have one for your subsequent to have some kind of food reactivity issue too. However, there are also lots of instances where that doesn't happen. And it feels like some of that can steal a little bit of our joy, right? Like that we're just on edge all the time waiting for, like, oh, that spit up, or that diaper, or and I've been there. I've been that parent because my second baby had food allergies too. And the moment that I felt confident to say, like, yeah, that's the journey that we're on, it was almost the world's most awful, like, sigh of relief, because I could stop like waiting for this to start. And I could be like, okay, like, yep, we're doing this. We're on this journey again. I sort of know what to do next. And that eventually led to Free to Feed because I didn't find any really great resources to help me navigate it again. But I feel that it's a tension, right? It's a tension of like, how about now? How about now? and it's knowledge, right? It's because you have knowledge of what the journey looks like, that you're constantly like looking for it at that point. So my heart goes out, and thank you for sharing that too. It's so helpful to hear that, like, the parents aren't alone, right? Even as like an expert, even as somebody in this field, that like you can get kind of wrapped up into it as well. And I like to tell parents that as it relates to like me being a scientist, even as a scientist, the first time that somebody told me that my baby had a bloody stool because of something I ate, like my brain exploded. I had no idea. Like, what do you mean something that I consume can end up in my breast and cause an allergic reaction? That's insane. And literally my whole job was studying proteins. And in no way, shape, or form did my brain like compute that was a possibility in our journey. Again, to go back to the, like, it would be more strange if you did just know those things. So with that, I'd love to hear your thoughts as it relates to when these parents are navigating this journey and trying to communicate to their medical provider. Do you feel like the time constraint is the biggest gap in communication? Do you feel like, or is there something else that's causing more of like the struggle and communication back and forth between parent to provider?
I think there's a couple of things. I think the time gap is definitely part of it. So I would recommend for any parent, if you really have a true concern, just schedule a separate visit, because at least the whole time that you're there, you're focused on what you want to be focused on, and they don't have to try to split their time. But also I think it's with training, because for the longest time, when I, first started, it was kind of oh, you got blood and mucus, you get alimentum, end of story, have a great day. There wasn't even there wasn't even a thought of, oh, I can change the diet, or I can change this. So just depending upon where, the pediatrician is in their journey, or what you've been taught, because there's so much information that changes so fast. I mean, even something simple with COVID. If you look at the vaccines and how they're changing and what you can have, I mean, we don't even print it anymore because we have to look it up. So medicine changes so rapidly, and depending upon what you're dealing with in your office, this might not be the thing that you're oh, I can do that. So as we learn and grow, and I would encourage any parent that's on that journey, if you have a pediatrician that is saying that, then just to, maybe just ask, well, there's some new things that are coming, down the pike. Is this something valid? Would you recommend that I, listen to this or follow this? And that might just encourage them to look it up. Because usually, I'm not one of those people who thinks I know everything. So if you come to me and I'm just I don't know, let me find out. Let me get back to you. Or better yet, I'll send you to someone else who might know better than I do. Because, I don't know everything. It's not possible, So it's probably a combination of just those two things.
Yeah. And I appreciate that you brought that up too, because, for example, if we're looking at the food allergy arena, right, and research, if you, went to school a little while ago, just a little while ago, if you went to school a little while ago, and these non-IgE mediated food allergies that are most often eliciting a response for infants literally didn't get diagnostic codes until 2017. If you are not very specifically looking for new research and information on that particular topic, you may not know, right? And as a pediatrician, you're really and certainly, correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of you're a triage, and these are all of the issues, and now based on this information, who do I send you to if you need additional, like you mentioned, if I don't know. And so if, and there's so many things then to learn, right? The nitty gritty into non-IgE mediated food allergies is one of a billion topics that you could be looking at during your continued education or conferences. Exactly. There's so many things, because we're talking about the whole body, right? You're not being told in your particular specialty that you're focused on the eyeball. You have to focus on the eyeball and everything else. And so, back to it would be strange if you did know everything about all of the things all of the time. I would be do you need a hug and a nap? Because that's a lot. That is a lot. And, similarly on my front, I like to tell people I know a lot about very little. I know a whole lot, and that's the whole premise of a PhD, right? I know so much about very, very little. And, the more deeper you get into different specialties, that's often the case. And for those who we are meeting with in a medical provider space, most often it's the other way around, where they will know the basics and what's necessary for a lot, right? They have to know a really great foundation for so many things, because we're talking birth to 18 years old, everything under the sun, head to toe, in the time when you're going to most change in your life, right? Grow, and hormones and puberty, all that craziness. And you have to know all of the things about all of that. So I think that it's important too to acknowledge, one, the time constraint is really a system piece that needs to be fixed and worked on. And the knowledge piece is where I think that it's so important for us to, one, as parents, come to the table as well as we can with the most concise description, right? So that it makes sense and that it can be flagged accordingly the way it should be. And two, not to be afraid to, like you said, actually mention, hey, I acknowledge and know that, FPIES didn't actually, officially enter the scene until 2017. Are you well versed in it? If not, do you have someone in your practice, or can you refer me to a specialist who is well versed in it? I'd like to talk more about it. And that's the beauty of having kind of that open communication and conversation, and I think that having a conversation with someone like you prior, for me at least, would give me that little bit of extra confidence, right? A little extra confidence to be able to say that, right? Of, yeah, I hear you. And I understand that you may or may not be super familiar with FPIES. Who else can we talk to? And I'd really love to be able to talk to someone else. And having that extra confidence as a parent is completely is invaluable, right? It is, there's no price tag that I could put on having just a little bit more confidence to kind of not even necessarily force the conversations, but to facilitate, right? Facilitate the conversation. This is a thing that we should talk about. Oh my goodness. Wonderful, wonderful. So I could talk to you literally all day long. And I, of course, will say the thing that I hear from a lot of parents of I wish that I had you back when you and LaShawn are really, really making me wonder if I'm going to move to South Carolina.
You're not very far.
You're not very far. I'm going to go move down there so that I can see you as our medical provider as well. So that all being said, Dr. Taylor, as you're thinking about our listeners and the things that they're likely in the midst of their journey for, is there anything that you would like to either say to them or leave a message for them as they're kind of in the trenches right now?
I think my biggest thing would be to just stay encouraged. It's hard enough to be a mom of a normal, healthy baby, that has absolutely nothing wrong, but anything that's going on, it's difficult. So, just because something's going on doesn't mean you're a bad mom, doesn't mean you're doing it wrong, so it just means you just need a little help. So just, seek out your help, and then, just keep working at it. Take some time for you, do a woosah and just keep moving forward, because we're going to get there. Yes.
I appreciate that encouragement. I think I will tuck that away for myself as well. So thank you for that. So Dr. Taylor, again, I so appreciate this conversation, this deep dive into a lot of the questions that a lot of our parents often have as it relates to the different relationships that we have while we're navigating any kind of health issue, really. And so for anybody that's listening, from me, I want to say that I'm so crazy proud of wherever you are in your journey today. You're doing an amazing job, and my bra is off to you. Truly, truly doing incredible. If you are interested in booking a time with Dr. Taylor, you can find that information at freetofeed.com/consult. You can also find her bio is linked there, so you can learn more about her journey. And book a time to have those conversations about the symptoms that you're potentially dealing with, the worries that you have, and how to best communicate with your providers in the time that you have allotted. So really having an action plan of okay, these are the things that are most important for me to best communicate. And so with that, I will just say thank you again to Dr. Taylor for joining me for this, and to our listeners. And we will see you next time.